I was really pissed off about that too last night. I had to go rake my entire front and backyard after the U.S. Olympic qualifying team crashed out,
Man,
two to
that's some
one.
boomer energy right there.
Yeah, it was. It was.
Let's clean out the gutters. This team's so bad.
Oh man, yeah, it was tough. It was tough. And Doyle, thank you for doing your spaces on Twitter. I know it's small, but as somebody who's always wanted that, right after a U.S. national team game, we used to do it a little bit, with Club and Country, but I think this is even more visceral. Having that place to go rant was really sort of liberating for me. Before I go on my rant, can you just sort of tell us where you're at with this? The third straight time, U.S. not going to the Olympics. U.S. men, I should reiterate once again.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take on again.
Third straight time, fourth time in 5 that the U.S. men have missed the Olympics. I'm caught between just like really bright red anger born of frustration at the very avoidable mistakes that were made along the way, and a sort of calm acceptance, because this loss was not a referendum on the level of talent in this cohort in the way that what we saw 5 years ago was. This loss, I mean, these guys were at best second choice players, and most of them much further down the list than that. We all know that the very best Olympic age eligible players are the likes of Pulisic and McKennie and Adams and Reina and Sargent and Dest and Chris Richards now, and all those guys who we saw basically earlier in the day against Northern Ireland, which was not a great performance, by the way, but whatever. It was nice to see them play. So it doesn't hurt as bad as what we saw 5 years ago when that team just had no chance against Honduras and Albert Elise smoked them. But in a way, it hurts worse because this was self-inflicted. And like everything from Jonathan Lewis missing 2 chances that, I mean, that second one is easier to score. But also, like, Jonathan Lewis was the only one on the team who was getting in position to actually score, and that's because we didn't choose the right team in terms of midfield and forwards. Like, Jeremy Abobasi should have been there. And he, like, why? I'm all over the place right here, but like everything from like, and I wrote about it a month ago when they chose the roster. Like, we chose the wrong guys for this tournament. Jeremy Abobasi, Eric Williamson, Keaton Parks, James Sands. These are all Cole Bassett. These are all guys who are starters for their club teams. And that means they have been able to shoulder a level of not just expectation, but responsibility. Week-to-week responsibility for how their clubs play. And with Williamson and Abobasi and Parks and Sands, these guys are on good teams. These guys are on winning teams, and they have accepted that burden, and they have shown that they could thrive under that burden. And if you look at that roster yesterday, if you look at that lineup yesterday, there were only 4 guys who are starters for their teams. And it's not a surprise that the only U.S. player really who showed well was Jackson Ewell, who has a ton of responsibility for his club team. And so I thought that the roster that, on top of tactical issues and personnel issues, but the roster that we put out yesterday were guys who haven't shown that they have the ability, the internal resources to handle the responsibility for how their team plays. And so you end up with a team that plays really, really flat soccer, that looks overwhelmed by the moment. And Jason Christ said it afterwards, guys miscontrolling passes, guys making simple errors, guys hiding from the ball. That was the story of this team yesterday. The story of this team through the tournament was Jason Christ picking the wrong players. And the story of the team tactically frankly, I think Jason Christ making some really questionable choices, including, yes, like the silverest lining you could find from the group stage was that we were really hard to break down. Even Mexico, the only time they really put us under pressure was when we were giving the ball away. There was nothing that came from our structure being janky. But then Jason Christ changed the midfield structure yesterday. He had Georgi Mihailovic as a right winger sort of pinching in, and that pushed Hassani Dotson higher, and that left the U.S. with a lot of 2v3s in central midfield. And if you look at that first half, Honduras was able to, get upfield, win second balls. Like, these forwards were not great. This guy was cut by Rio Grande Valley, which is not a good USL team, and they made him look like prime Zlatan. I'm all over the place. I thought I had something a little more concise to say about it. Clearly not. But it feels like Cuva in some ways, in that like literally everything had to go wrong for the U.S. to fail in Cuva in 2017, we had basically a replay of all of that, from roster selection to tactical choices to guys not showing up to missed sitters, and to the goalkeeper making one great save, and everything went wrong, and the U.S. missed the Olympics again, and it's a damn shame because it didn't have to be this way.
I had a lot more sort of, you talk about that red hot anger. I was really feeling that last night. And today I just feel sad. I just feel just this sort of like pit of disappointment. And that disappointment isn't really around like individual actions on the field. It really is organizational to me, because when a country like ours, who's making the progress that we are in soccer, and even before that progress occupied the place that we did within the region, and now that's not to say that we're some like unbeatable giants. Honduras is like, they've handled us in Olympic qualifying. Honduras has handled us in World Cup qualifying too. We're not perfect, but the reason organizations exist are to prevent repeat failure. Like, that is the entire point of having bureaucracy and organizations and like institutional knowledge and process. That's why it's there. And so for this to happen again says to me that either U.S. soccer doesn't care about qualifying for the Olympics, like I hope that that's not true, or they don't know how, or they didn't put the resources behind it, or they didn't think it was going to be hard as it is. And that is crazy to me, given the failures that we've had repeatedly, not just in this qualifying, but in youth national teams, period. In our frickin' senior team missing the World Cup. You cannot have these things happen. It can't happen if you want to be what we say we want to be. And I don't care that these guys are never going to see a World Cup field, and probably that the relationship between development of theirs in their, maybe in their careers, I don't know, but like in our senior national team and the ultimate goal of winning the World Cup, that's probably tenuous. Like what? It's maybe Herrera, Jackson Ewell, maybe Ochoa could push down the line, and look, he made an error. That happens. The only reason we're here is because he's an absolute stud in the other games in the group stage. Like, sure, all that can happen. What I'm pissed off about is that we had this opportunity as a country. We had an opportunity as a men's program to right a wrong, a repeat wrong, to show that we're past that, at least now. We can do this, and we can go to the Olympics and try to win something. The entire point of all this is to try to win something, to just be in the seat to win. We don't even get that opportunity. Imagine a men's team doing what the women's team does, or even just like scrapping their way to a bronze medal game. It would be a massive moment for soccer in this country. I don't care that people say that the Olympics aren't a big men's tournament. Who cares? What are you talking about? We've won the Gold Cup and we're out here just throwing away the Olympics, the pinnacle of human sport. We're just saying, you know what? Because the rest of the world isn't that keen on this, or they like sometimes aren't as, they don't promote it as much, or you don't get all the players here. Like, it's okay for us to not care about as much about the Olympics. Like, get out of here. What are you talking about? If we want to be what we say we want to be, if we're pointing towards 2026 and saying, hey, maybe this group can win it, maybe winning should be a habit. Maybe we should be doing everything possible to build up these guys so that when they hit these games at U23, they've been in the battles in CONCACAF. So they've been together for a year. They've had opportunities to meld and mesh and be a unit so that they can have a once-in-a-lifetime thing. So we can watch our players walk out with the best in the world at the opening ceremonies, so they can have an opportunity to play the best in the world in their age cohort. Like, so they can have this moment for all time, and so can we.
So,
Like, it's a communal thing.
I don't disagree with anything you guys have said so far. And I think to be angry after a performance like that and a loss is totally fair. And I think all of us on this show are deep enough in soccer that we understand what this means and what's happening. And there's a level of context. And this might be easier for me right now because I didn't watch the game live, actually. I watched it on replay. So maybe I feel less of the hot rage as I watch them miss trap balls and people just play it out of bounds throughout this game that mattered. But most of what you just said isn't totally true, Weeby. And you know that.
What is it? Tell me what's not true.
Well, one in July, when we would start going into, hey, who's coming to the Olympics? And we named every big player, you all would have said, no, don't bring that player. That player shouldn't come to the Olympics. That doesn't matter for them. They're not playing the best players at their age. So that's not true. It doesn't totally affect the way the national team is because, again, as everyone has said, almost none of these players will probably be a factor for the national team. But the biggest part about this is what happened yesterday is not what happened 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and not what happened 4 years before that. Because what was happening then was our youth national team players, our young players weren't good, and we couldn't compete. What happened yesterday was our U23 team plays for our first team now. We skipped a generation, and they went and beat Northern Ireland in Ireland or in Northern Ireland. I don't really understand the geography of that right now, and I don't really care. They went and won in Europe, and the only thing that matters and the only thing you care about is World Cup qualifying.
That's not true.
It is not their role. It is not their role to go to Olympics. One, if the U.S. won a bronze medal at 4:30 in the morning in Tokyo in July of 2021, it would not change the soccer world. It would not change the U.S. Impact, and it would not change the development of this country. All that matters.
Can I just respond to
one
one part of that?
Cup.
No, that all that matters doesn't mean it's the only thing that matters.
Understood.
And how can a country like ours that frankly has no chance of winning the World Cup in a realistic model right now, we got to build toward that. Mm-hmm. You know, we crushed Klinsmann.
And how do we build towards that? We have the best players who are available play together.
Can you do multiple things in your life, Dave?
What?
Can you succeed as a friend and a family member and as a professional? Why can't our soccer organization succeed or try to or do their best to on every front? Why can't they? Why would we bail them out and say, well, it's okay because now you have World Cup qualifying? You missed the World Cup. You didn't get to it.
And that is the issue, and that is a massive issue. And I'm not excusing U.S. soccer for being good, but the sins that caused that mistake, one, are being repeated in this moment because the best young players are with the first national team because we don't have a national team of 25 to 30-year-olds that can play. And two, that already happened. That's something that already happened. My reaction is the sky is falling moment yesterday where we develop players poorly. We don't pick the right guys. We can't win dual nationals. We're not competitive in CONCACAF. When all of that over the last few years has shown that it is being fixed, and yet people are upset. So let's take this example. You've got Brendan Aronson, Brian Reynolds, Mark McKenzie, Daryl Dike, Reggie Cannon, and Joe Scally. Would any of them have helped yesterday? Yes. And you would have taken all of them. Would you prefer all of them to make multi-million-dollar moves to Europe?
Sure, but you're
so
again
you
you're
don't care about the Olympics
problems.
as much as you care
sure.
about these other things.
That's
Are we
fine.
winning dual nationals?
Yeah, sure. I never said those were problems.
Younger than Efra Alvarez, who gets called into Mexico.
Time out.
Mexico loses to Wales this week, and the world's okay. The U.S. beats Northern Ireland, and we're not good enough yet. The team we played in Ireland is basically 25 and under, outside of Tim Ream's man bun and a few moments with Sebastian Lletget. And that is our national team. All of these guys are U23 eligible. None of them would be going to the Olympics. They're all MLS developed. Everything has gotten better.
Agreed.
And while yesterday sucks, none of it means what anyone is trying to make it mean.
I'm not trying to make it mean that. I never said it meant that.
It's wrong to say everything has gotten better. And the amount of resources and time put into our youth national team programs has Mexico MLS teams are doing a better job than ever before of producing young talent, which is great. But no, listen to what I said. The amount of resources USSF is putting into the youth national teams has gotten worse.
Mexico
has had 40 camps 40 camps since the start of 2019 across the U15s to the U18 level. The U.S. has had 14. There's a reason why Mexico can plug and play players who aren't great. Like this Mexico team that we saw in this Olympic qualifying, they were not world beaters, but they can plug and play guys who are missing time from all the way up from the 17s to the 20s to the 23s in a way that we haven't been able to. Now, does that matter on a long term? I don't know, because Weeby's right and you're right. What we saw from this U23 team does not necessarily portend failure for the full national team. It is not the type of developmental tool that the U20 level has been historically. And it is not like none of the guys who took the field look like they're going to be key pieces of the national team for the future. So you're right. It is different than what happened in 2016. But to say that it's all gotten better is just wrong. The amount of resources put into the youth national team program by USSF over the past 5 years has taken a nosedive.
So let me say two things. One, yes, this Mexico team may not be world beaters. There were first team players that they kept for the Olympics that we did not do. Sebastian Cordova is a starter for the first national team, and multiple players that were in the Olympic qualifying for Mexico would have been in Europe with their first team. We did not do that. The second is, I don't think that this should be centralized. We have had strong youth national teams for since 97. So for 24 years, that's not the way that this is going to work. And we all know this because we all love sharing videos of good players playing for Americans playing in Champions League. And most of them have come out of professional development academies in MLS or from USL or have gone to Europe at a younger age. I don't believe that the way this gets fixed is by the U.S. Soccer Federation being more in control. And so while using resources poorly is not positive, I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I don't think that reflects that things have gotten worse because these players are better. Weston McKennie and Brian Reynolds and Gio Reyna are ready to play in Champions League at 18 and 17 years old, and Brendan Aronson because of the academy systems they came through, not because they played in residency and played a ton of friendlies at a U20 and U21 level.
I think we're talking past each other here, Dave, because I never, in anything I've said about this, have said that this is an indication on our ability to do what is, we all know, most important, which is get to the World Cup and do as well as we possibly can there and hopefully push on and be a country that can continually do that. But I don't see any reality in which U.S. soccer or U.S. soccer fans can or should shrug off something like the Olympics. There should have been a concentrated effort to make sure, damn sure that we get there. And these guys can do it. The quality of these players is good enough. And if we're out here excusing that away, that's a trash culture that we're building. And I know they might get
although
into this.
To Doyle's point, this team sucks. This team wasn't very good. A lot of the guys on the team should
are they better than talent-wise and experience-wise? Are they among the top two teams in this region right now?
If you want to sit here and say other CONCACAF teams aren't as good, then we're excusing the fact that competition doesn't matter, and then there's no point playing any of these games.
Honduras, for a good reason, has kicked our ass in this.
For sure, and that's why they're able to beat us. But the other point is, a year ago, I think this group would have been a little different. So that also has to be acknowledged was we're cramming in friendlies, going into a Nations League with a Gold Cup and World Cup qualifying right after. If we were to say be in an Olympics, I think it lost value this year compared to where it would have sat in 2020.
Man, I just can't. I can't see a world in which a U.S. soccer can look at the Olympics and say that it has lost value. I cannot see that world. That is like the opportunity that we lost isn't just about development, isn't about preparing players and all that. It's about our sport still being, let's be honest, niche, and having an opportunity for our players who our system produced to go and compete on a world stage and maybe come home with a medal. You had an opportunity, and the U.S. women will do it. You watch how they do it, and you watch what the country will do.
It's a full international competition,
and they're playing against full internationals. So these U23s are still playing their peers.
I don't care about peers, Weirby. You're talking about the value, media-wise and appearance-wise, of this when it's not that. It's not a world's competition. Outside of Germany and Brazil, literally no one cares.
Tell the entire country that,
Congratulations,
Dave.
we're not
Tell
Germany
the entire country that.
You're
That's absurd.
Just from a soccer,
That's absurd.
hardcore soccer perspective.
We're going to win
Whereas if you-
113 gold medals at the next Olympics. No one's going to notice the bronze that the U.S. men didn't win.
Why did hold the time out?
If
No.
the U.S. team went to that 4:30 in the morning game in the bronze medal, that would be massive here. I think people would really get behind that. And people look at the women's team. I mean, people go through and they follow the women's team because they want to watch Americans win. They want to watch Americans succeed.
They want to watch the best in the world. The Olympic men's soccer tournament is not that. That's why people love watching the women's game, because you're watching Japan US at its pinnacle. You're watching Canada US at its pinnacle.
That's
people
the soccer
don't
nerd
want to watch
version,
the
man.
U23.
We got to get outside the soccer nerd
So
version.
then people are tuning in to watch Hassani Dotson, and then they think the US program's not good.
No.
Because it's not that.
Well, maybe we should bring more players then. I mean,
Maybe.
why do we have to do it exactly the same way we've always done it in the past? Like, why I understand there are a whole host of different challenges as far as roster building and getting people in, but like, was it really prioritized? And do we have to do it the exact same way that we've done it in the past? Because when you look at some of the players' perspectives, it sounds like Christian Pulisic was pretty eager to play in the Olympics, right? And it is important, maybe not to Goss, but it's important to him. And it sounds like there's probably a lot of players like that. Now, can you work with Chelsea? Can you work with whatever? He's probably not going to be available, obviously, for this, but can you find a way to really, really prioritize it? I'm not sure that happened.
So
Can we qualify for the stuff we try to qualify for and then go try to put our best foot forward? I don't care about any excuses. I don't care about how people see it. Like, we had a chance to go to the Olympics. We had a chance to have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our players. We as fans, and that matters. It does.
So wait,
Development's not the only
you're
thing.
just yelling. What is the solution then? Like, what went wrong?
I think a lot of the things you said. I mean, one thing for sure is that if you look at Mexico and the camps and the group they were able to put together, despite these guys not being probably vast majority going to play for El Tri and Tata, they know each other. They've been around each other. They've been in hard situations. Has this team had those opportunities?
No. Mexico's U23s have played more than 20 games together over the past 3 years. The U.S. played 2.
And it hurts me to hear in this post-game conference just out of this like shrug. And look, what's Jason going to say? But it's not. That can't be what we say in post games where we crash out of competitions where we could go compete on a world level, no matter the age group, no matter the importance. It can't just be like, you lose and you win. Like, no. If we want to be the soccer country we want to be, when we don't win, that's a problem, and we go fix it. Did we fix it? No, because we've done this 3 straight times, and they're all different circumstances. But again, organizations and leadership exists to prevent repeat failures. This is a repeat failure. And that should never be acceptable for U.S. soccer. Our soccer is getting so much better. Our player development is getting so much better. This team is going to do things I believe that no other U.S. team has done. And I'm extremely excited for that. But we've robbed ourselves of one massive opportunity to do it again.
Let me just make another
Why?
point. I apologize to Anders. So Weevy's going to get the last word because I'm nicer to Anders than Weevy
I'm done.
is.
This is yours. You have the last one.
Again, great. Mexico had a lot of U20, U23 programs. 5 years ago, we didn't qualify for the World Cup. What's wrong? Well, we don't have enough players contending in Europe. They don't challenge themselves enough. Okay, so then we send them all there. Well, European teams don't release players for youth national team camps because a lot of those Mexico camps happen outside of FIFA windows,
right.
And they don't release players for Olympic qualifying. So now the U.S. isn't good enough because we did the thing everyone asked them to do, and now all our players are competing at a higher level. They're competing more consistently. They're in mid-season in Europe, and so now we don't go to the Olympics, and we're not as good as Mexico. Because Mexico put together a bunch of U23 camps because Tata likes to coach things and is in the country and has things to do, and all their young players play in Mexico. Now in Mexico, well, our players don't go to Europe. We should probably push them out. But congratulations, you had one good day for Olympic qualifying once every 4 years. Again, Weeby, I totally agree. You shouldn't want to lose. You should always compete. And if your issue is resources, to Doyle's point, totally fair. Was Jason Christ the right coach for this team? Probably not. Did they get the best coach they could by putting the right resources into this program? Probably not. Did you organize as many camps as you could? No. Again, Yunus Musa started for the U.S. at 18 years old yesterday in midfield. Gio Reyna scored and Christian Pulisic scored. All of them are Olympic eligible. I don't care that they're not going to not play in Olympics that they weren't going to play in anyway. Sorry.
I care that this was self-inflicted. I think it just goes back to the point I made about picking the roster in the first place. If you know you're not going to have your stars, you know you're going to have to be really good on set pieces. You know you're going to have guys who, to borrow a turn of phrase from our guys at Scuffed, who win the battle in the cage. And if you watch the game yesterday, Andres Perea missed he lost every 50-50. Lewis Mihailovic, Jesus Ferreira, complete no-show. Sebastian Soto did nothing when he got on. Bofo Saucedo did nothing when he got on. We didn't have guys who could win those 50-50s. On top of that, the tactical setup exposed the U.S. and put a ton of stress on that back line. And it was just a perfect storm of bad choices, bad performances, bad tactical decisions, and another bad outcome for the U.S. U-23s.